Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Brian E. Roach.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma. Joining me here by my side of one, Mr. Brian E. Roach. 50th anniversary of the terrible towel, my friend. You were sporting everything. That's what they were celebrating last week, even though the Steelers couldn't celebrate much with that loss to the Buffalo Bills. How you doing, my friend?
I am struggling through a quagmire of misery and awfulness.
Sounds wonderful. By the way, up over my shoulder, I got one of the 50th towels there that I'm sporting as well. I mean, it gets, sometimes my big old head's in the way, so I'm back into the microphone, and everybody's gonna be like, "Whoa, that was too loud." Wow. Okay, so yeah, you got the Byron Cope shirt going too, right? Yeah, that's slick, dude. I need to get one of those. So very cool. One of my all-time favorites, by easily. That's my childhood of Steelers fandom for sure. Especially, growing up where I was, just over the border. Like I could have walked into Western Pennsylvania. The marker was right there for the border, and like just that fine line that's there. Didn't always get the Steelers on TV, so you got that team that wears those ugly crap colors, that's somewhere further north, just who we're talking about. But anyways,
I do.
They were upset, the Browns fans. I think it was last week actually, because CBS only had like the contract. They flip with Fox. They alternate every other week as to who has the doubleheader. Not everybody always has two NFL games in the afternoon. One of those games goes unopposed. And CBS only had the one game, and guess which game they showed? The one that was all in red on that map last week, right? The Pittsburgh Steelers and Buffalo Bills. So even in parts of Northeast Ohio, back in Youngstown where I grew up, it's you could have drew a straight line, a diagonal line between Youngstown or between Pittsburgh and Cleveland. Youngstown's right in the middle for the folks that aren't aware of the geography. They had this little carve out on that map. I wish I had last week's map. Actually, I might still, but I don't want to confuse anyone because we're already confused enough, right? So let me see if I can pull up at least this week's map and get us started with some housekeeping items as we get ready for the 6-6 Baltimore Ravens, the 6-6 Pittsburgh Steelers at M&T Bank in Baltimore, Maryland, 1:00 Eastern time. CBS, Jim Nantz, Tony Romo, Tracy Wolfson. Pittsburgh Steelers coverage is in the red. So once again, that Youngstown area and actually through Columbus, Dayton, and Cincinnati is receiving the Pittsburgh Steelers and Baltimore Ravens game. Cleveland is actually somewhere. They're on Fox, so they'll have to worry about them or the Bengals in those markets. And then there's the one really goofy late game. The Cleveland area is actually not even getting Pittsburgh. They don't have them in the red there. They're getting the Denver Broncos and Las Vegas Raiders. Which makes absolutely, you can never figure these things out from week to week. But also getting the Steelers and Ravens. If you're up in the Dakotas, part of Montana, if you're in Los Angeles, if you're in Phoenix, if you're in most of Texas, not Oklahoma's getting something else. All of Texas except for the Houston area. And then you've got parts of like Birmingham, Alabama. You've got Nashville, Tennessee, West Virginia, part of North Carolina minus Charlotte. You get into, the New England states, except for a small carve out there. Very weird map this week for the folks that aren't able to see this on now on video streaming on YouTube, Spotify, and Facebook. So check us out there if you have a chance. And if you have already, thank you very much. Except for the guy who said he needed to buy Apple Care because he couldn't stand my voice. So thank you for the comment, sir. It was just like, man, this big long, I'm not even gonna get into it on here. You get people like that come at us because, I don't have to agree with everyone. Everybody, you could have a difference of opinion, but it's almost like sometimes people feel like we own the team and that we make the decisions. And I also found out when doing some of these shorter format videos, the shorts and the reels and whatnot, I was like, people are in the comments and they're like telling me, no, I would do this. What is this guy talking about? They mean me by this guy. And I'm like, it dawned on me. It's like, I said all those things, but they just don't watch the whole video. Or they just aren't listening, reading, or whatever. Attention span is like, a goldfish. So, it gets some of that too. I chuckle. I don't try and take it personally. I don't try and take when the Steelers have a bad game. Brian, we get frustrated. We get annoyed. We get upset. Like Mike Tomlin said, this is an entertainment product. And when we're not entertained, we're unhappy. And we've been unhappy. We've been unhappy for quite some time here. And the Steelers are now, kind of looking over their shoulders. Dare say must-win game for the rest of this season. They got to have this one. It doesn't look good based on all of the things that we've seen leading up to this. Seems like a team that's floundering. Seems like a team that's desperate. A team that's lost 3 of their last 4. And let me see and do a little bit more math here. And 4 of their last 6 games, if I have that correct. So they got a very short period of time to turn this around. The schedule doesn't look necessarily like it's in their favor. Going to Baltimore might not look like it's in their favor, but the Ravens don't look good either. And Baltimore, let me tell you, we got to start this by not even doing like a true preview of just this game, but just the stuff that's led up to this throughout the week, right? So before we get to injury reports and stuff like that, for all the people that want to fire Mike Tomlin, I have seen almost a post for every fan base, some blog, some website. I've seen the Giants. I've seen the Browns and Bengals even say it, that if Mike Tomlin was fired, would you take Mike Tomlin as your coach? And these people are all like, yes, and yes, and yes, and yes. And it's like, even Ben Roethlisberger's talking about a change of scenery. I just thought, that's interesting that you even have your division rivals that respect this coach enough. Now, on the other side of the fence, you've got the Ravens fans saying the same thing, not necessarily about Mike Tomlin, but they're just tired of John Harbaugh. They'd have like a lot of inconsistency there. Their team, they made some moves. They made a trade to pick up a safety. They did a couple other things. They're able, like Mike Tomlin alluded to this in his very long presser. He took a lot of questions, a lot of time, and still said like a lot of nothing in most cases, because what's he going to say? He can't say it the same way we can. You'll lose the team for sure if you thought that you lost the team already. So what are the Steelers doing in this interim, to combat, John Harbaugh and the Ravens, longtime battling coaches here. Tomlin is 20-16 against the Ravens. Harbaugh is 15-19. This game is the 64th overall and 59th regular season meeting between the Steelers and Ravens. 9 of the last 11 of these have been decided by 7 points or less, including 6 by 4 points or less. But in this game, the bookies, Vegas, the sports books have the Ravens as a 6-point favorite at home, an over-under of only 42.5. So they don't really expect maybe the Steelers to score much of any points, and the Ravens to have maybe a 2-score victory if you're reading into this a little bit. But Mike Tomlin, as the head of the Steelers, is 189, 113-2 in 19 seasons. Harbaugh, 17 seasons with the Ravens. He's 178 and 110. So this is a classic clash of two coaches that do about the same thing. Their teams have the same kind of ups and downs and ebbs and flows. And I want to get into the Steelers being desperate, but I've already been a little long-winded. Let me kick it over to you, my friend, and you could give it a little start here. A little push.
I don't know.
Give it the push.
I'll give it a push. Look, there's no hopeful outlook moving into this game, right? There's no lens you can view this game through that makes you think that the Steelers have a chance to come out of Baltimore with a victory. Most of the lenses that you can view the rest of the season through would indicate that the team is not going to make the playoffs. They're not going to win the division. They're likely going to have their first losing record. And by the end of the season, we will have some wholesale changes. Whether that includes the coach or not, time will tell. But that's the lens you're sitting at right now to look towards the rest of the season. And it's not just us. I mean, talking heads all over the place. Roethlisberger, Debo, people on all of the major outlooks and channels. Nobody thinks things are going to get better. We brought in 39-and-a-half-year-old Adam Thielen in order to
that's what spruce up our with desperation, right?
Yeah, spruce up our receiving core. And I will give the Steelers media group credit on the little short they put on YouTube, they sped it up, so he looks super fast. But I don't think he's really that fast anymore. Who knows? Look, the Rodgers just hasn't looked in sync with the receivers all season long, right? They have not established a rapport. Are they going to do it all of a sudden overnight? I doubt it. I just doubt it, right? It feels highly unlikely that we're going to see any real change for the remainder of this season. So we're going to have a rocky road. But stranger things have happened. They got to 8-8 with Duck Hodges. So who knows?
Yeah. Duck Hodges, that name comes up too frequently, and I also think about that's the season that kind of tanked at the end. He threw 6 interceptions the last 3 games, and they had a chance. They were in that position and then fell. Last season they squeaked in because they had won some games. This game in Baltimore could have been a lot different if Russell Wilson didn't have the turnovers. He had that one really carrying the ball real loose on that scramble. They were competitive, but man, I just don't even know. I don't know if I see the same. That was like the beginning of the end with last season's team, where they started to give up 150, 200 rushing yards per game. Derrick Henry ran all over them with 2 games if you include the postseason. The Eagles just dominated the Steelers. The Kansas City Chiefs dominated the Steelers. There aren't really get-right games left on the schedule. You can't get right if you lose this and then play the Dolphins, because you've given up a division loss to the Ravens, and now you'll be a game behind them. So if the Steelers got that game up, that also helps stave off the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a victory against both the Steelers and the Ravens. And I mean, the Bengals have a real uphill battle. They got the Packers this weekend too, and I think they have to go to Green Bay. So if it wasn't this weekend, it's coming up. But they've got to win out, and they got to hope that some other teams lose, and they need some things to happen. They also need, like the Steelers or Ravens, to do things against themselves. So the Steelers, as usual, control their own destiny. It's not unlike a Mike Tomlin team, though, to be eliminated before the final week of the season. That usually does not occur. They're still in it. We're still watching. We still have hope. This isn't like the Jets. This isn't the Raiders. This isn't the Titans. The newer Titans, when Vrabel was there and Malarkey and guys before that, they were about in the same category of they might make the postseason, might be the first team out or something like that.
I mean, you said something that resonates to a certain degree with me, which is normally we have hope, right? No matter where we are in the season, normally we have hope. This year doesn't feel like that, right? There is a different feel. Like we have been accused of being homers so much and so often because hey, big surprise, Captain Obvious, we're homers. And look, that's who we are. But there are legitimate reasons over the past 4 seasons or 5 seasons where we, things could have swung a different way. This year, you just don't feel the same. At least I don't, right? I literally do not have that optimism right now. I don't see a hopeful outlook, even though statistically it's there. I just don't have faith that this group is going to get it done.
Yeah, it's true, man. I mean, the offense, and it's weird because the offense was scoring more points. They've actually, I know they've been inconsistent. I know they stall. I know there's 3 and outs, but then they'll sustain a 10 or 12 play drive that wasn't there when Matt Canada was doing this. And Randy Fichtner, much of the same thing. And again, there's a lot of things that I could hold or I want to hold off on until the offseason, because people talk about, well, Tomlin brings in these coordinators, this and that. Look, folks, I'm gonna boil it down here, and there'll be somebody in the comments doesn't want a playoff game and blah 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 blah. Ben Roethlisberger shares equal blame in this. Ben Roethlisberger goes out there and throws interceptions or takes sacks, fumble, whatever. He had some very poor playoff games. Ben Roethlisberger is also the reason Todd Haley was sent out of town, and his best buddy Randy Fichtner was promoted, and no other quarterback coach was there hired to replace Randy. It was just the Ben Roethlisberger show until it wasn't. He pops his elbow. He wasn't quite the same Ben Roethlisberger. He retires, and now you've been searching for the next guy and putting together some pieces. And of course, Matt Canada came in as, trying to fit like a square peg into an apple or something. It's not even like a round hole or anything like that with Matt Canada. You're talking about, apples and bricks. They're not even in the same category. That guy, he's not even like coaching anywhere right now. And that's the way I was feeling about Terrell Austin. I just don't know that they're ever going to fix anything on defense. It's very disheartening that, it's not the Steelers' way to fire anybody in the middle of the season. And they're talking about which people are going to have, he got Arthur Smith out here talking about Tomlin getting booed too. And, Kabali said he paraphrases this. He goes, he rolls his eyes when people act like a victim. We're in the sports entertainment business. Our job is to win. When you're the head coach, coordinator, or quarterback in this league, it's easy to stand up when you are winning. It is. Okay, now let's stand up when you're losing. That's what we need to see, Arthur. We need to see, I guess Aaron Rodgers invited everybody over and they're doing these little team meeting things, and we'll see if anything comes from it. And like you said, and like I was starting to say with desperation, you already mentioned Adam Thielen. What is he, 35 years old? He already said he's going to retire. Does he even show up? Because, you think of the sinking ship and not keeping hostages, and all of a sudden you see that Darius Slay, who was a healthy scratch last week, rightfully so, he hasn't played well. He has been a terrible fit for this team. We thought maybe he'd still have something left, and apparently so did the Eagles. They tried to claim him, but the Bills did instead, and now he says, well, wait a minute, and with Drew Rosenhaus as his agent, shocker there, that contemplating retirement, doesn't even want to play. He doesn't want to go to Buffalo. He wants to go somewhere warmer, but he still wanted to go somewhere where he could still play. There's only 5 weeks left, dude, so excuse me. But James Pierre, I think, had earned that spot, and I think the Steelers had seen enough out of Asante Samuel after getting him signed as a free agent, coming back from that, a year off and injured, that I think he'll get some play also, and we'll have to see how that works with the injury report. But Thielen, I don't think is the answer. We haven't seen Marquez Valdez-Scantling. What's the word I'm looking for? Activated or whatever, promoted. Either did a 53 or on game days is one of those extra players that they can promote off the practice squad. That doesn't bode well for a team that is desperate. And I mean, the Steelers are desperate. Is Rodgers going to get on the same page with Thielen? Can Thielen still get a little shimmy and get free a little more than somebody else? Does he have a veteran move? Because at this point, when you get up there in age as a receiver, you can't rely just on your physical talents anymore. There's going to be somebody younger, faster, stronger that's playing as a defensive back that's guarding you. So, now you got to rely on what? You got to rely on the stuff you learned, the veteran, the little tricks. Can you get a little shove off here, or a push or a pull, or, a double step? You just know what might work against somebody, particularly if there's any players that are inexperienced. And I don't know if that type of stuff is going to work against the Baltimore Ravens or not. Depends on who's all healthy and available to play for them. So without further ado, let's talk about that with the Steelers before we get into our keys to the game, or keys of the game. So, DK Metcalf veteran rest. Jalen Ramsey listed as rest and did not practice for 2 days, which is interesting. So we'll have to see what the Friday outlook is for Ramsey. Patrick Queen did not participate to limited. Aaron Rodgers had a day off Wednesday, full participant Thursday. Ben Skronik's been limited all week. Joey Porter showed up Thursday as limited with an elbow. Let me tell you, Joey's been another guy that's been dinged a lot this year, and I mean, he's been playing hurt, and you don't hear his name too much unless it's the random penalty. So I think he's been doing a-okay, considering a lot of people were picking on Slay. Try and pick on Pierre too, and I think, let's see if I don't think Pierre's listed. Is he still? Yeah, he went back to full in concussion protocol, which is a good sign for him. Kyle Duggar did not participate on Thursday. He pops up. You had Dante Kent. Where the hell's he been? Ankle and knee limited, and then did not participate. Again, Pierre in a concussion protocol. Kelvin Anderson, a backup tackle, somebody that they probably need for depth. He goes out on Wednesday limited and did not participate Thursday. That doesn't look good. TJ with a toe, but I'm told that was, almost like Veterans Day rest type situation. Back to full. And then Derek Carmen already ruled out for this upcoming week. That one is going to sting. A lot smaller list on the Ravens side of things, although there is one major one of note that we'll see right off the bat after we see Rashad Bateman shows up Thursday limited. Lamar Jackson was limited Wednesday and did not participate on Thursday. This is a team that just came off a Thursday night game with a mini bye and has their quarterback still in flux. Has not thrown a touchdown pass in the last 3 games. A lot of people think it's due to injury. We have, let's see, Travis Jones, a personal day off. Tavius Robinson, limited with the foot. Devontae Walker, reserve wide receiver, limited with a groin. Ardarius Washington, one of the extra safeties, limited with Achilles. And then Nate Wiggins, who left the previous Thursday night game that they played in, limited with a foot injury. It'll be interesting to see if he ends up playing. He's alongside Malachi Starks in that Ravens defense. I also wanted to mention, I know some folks tune in real quick just to get the rest of this through. I did say CBS at 1 o'clock, but if you're looking for the Steelers on the radio, Sirius 161, XM 383, Internet 826. Your referee is Alex Moore. I don't know who that is. That should be a good thing. So there's the rest of the housekeeping.
Or not.
Or it's going to be absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
They just don't give these division. I mean, there's division assignments every week and multiple times, and then everybody plays everybody twice. So at some point, the referees rotate and go through. But if it was somebody that's really like cutting their teeth, they get this game, they get a game with the Steelers or something earlier in the year, probably an NFC out of conference game, a game that doesn't have the same stakes necessarily. All these games have stakes or something at stake usually, but you know what I mean. Some appear to have fewer things at stake, and this is 2 6-6 teams, so maybe it's not your traditional game. Yeah, maybe it's not your traditional game. Steelers and Ravens.
It's funny to me that this is a game literally where first place in the division is on the line, but it is not a marquee game at this point. Nobody is viewing it as a marquee game anymore. Ravens Steelers was always the marquee game. It's just not right now, and that's not just a comment on the state of the Steelers, but also the comment on the state the Ravens have been in this season. The downside of that is it looks like we're going in one direction and potentially they're going in the other, although they looked horrible against the Bengals. So I
don't know really what direction that they're going in, to be honest. Their last few games, and you think about who they've played since their bye week. They played the Bears. They won 30-16. They played the Miami Dolphins 28-6, the Vikings 27-19, the Browns 23-16, the Jets 23-10, and then lost to the Bengals 32-14. And they got to play the Steelers and then back to the Bengals and the Patriots, the Packers, and then the Steelers again. And the Steelers are built to play this team. I don't think this is a team the Steelers will necessarily overlook, but you have a lot of new players that maybe they haven't been part of this organization long enough to maybe have that bad blood that you would have where everybody, like, you get a James Harrison, you get a Ben Roethlisberger, and you get on the other side, you get Ray Lewis or Terrell Suggs, or these guys. There's like a legit hate. Even Sean Swedrum told me there was a legit hatred between these teams. Does Jalen Ramsey feel that same thing necessarily?
At this point, no.
Patrick Queen used to play for him, so does he hate him? Does he dislike him? Is he on the other side? Do the other teammates look at him from the Ravens that he used to play with and they're like, traitor, something like that? Maybe that's about the most that you get out of that. What's Aaron Rodgers? Aaron Rodgers probably had more emotions had he played against the Bears, because he'd been playing them his whole life instead of, not playing against the Baltimore Ravens this week. So, and speaking of that, that's pretty important too. But look at the Ravens defense versus the Pittsburgh Steelers offense, and just giving a little peek into where did it go? I had all of these statisticals here, Brian. The Steelers, 24th in pass on offense, 28th in rushing offense. The Ravens are 25th against the path. Now I'm talking like Mike Tyson. They're 25th against the pass and 18th against the run. So the Steelers haven't been able to run the ball much. They bumped up from being last in the league, at least, which is hard to believe. And when you flip this around, the Ravens are actually 28th in passing, 5th in running. And some of that's because Lamar had been out for several games. They're playing Cooper Rush, they're playing Snoop Huntley, or whoever. And then you've got the Steelers defensively 28th against the pass, 17th against the run. And they did not look 17th against the run with James Cook and Josh Allen last week. And that's a very similar thing that they're looking at down the barrel of with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So let's talk first Steelers offense, because of Aaron Rodgers, his hand injury. You don't have very many injuries on the Ravens defense. You know, the nose tackle, Travis Jones, showed up on this report. I imagine he'll play. We'll have to see if Nate Wiggins ends up playing. Marlon Humphrey's been in and out of this lineup as well. You know, Roquan Smith is in the middle of that defense, a great inside linebacker. And then Kyle Van Noy. Van Noy's been somebody who, you know, he had a resurgence last season, but he hasn't been the same exact player this year. In fact, no one on the Baltimore Ravens has more than 2.5 sacks this year, which is, you know, that's really bad. It's uncharacteristic of them.
Very much so.
I mean, that's the reason why their fans are just as upset. Van Noy has 2. Mike Green has 2.5. You have Tavius Robinson, who was on the report, for 2, and then Nnamdi Madubuike, who they just don't have anybody on here, and Madubuike hasn't even been around. So it's an interesting year for Baltimore also. And if the Steelers were a little bit stronger of a team this season, they should have been able to just walk away with the division. As it stands, the real headline that you're seeing everywhere, aside from the fire Mike Tomlin stuff, is which of these damn teams wants to win the AFC North? It doesn't, like, it looks like a struggle bus.
Will it be the Bengals? Yes, yeah, it's like who
a struggle
will it be?
Bus.
Will it be the Bengals who come out of the ashes to win out and somehow look? If it is Green Bay, and I don't remember because I'm not looking at the schedule right now. If it is Green Bay that they have this weekend or next weekend, if they do manage to go to Green Bay and win that game, then you have to seriously consider them for the chance to winning out, right? They only have a couple of really tough games on their schedule the remainder of the year. The rest of them are not. So if they can pull victories in those, they've got an absolute shot of winning out. And if they do win out, they have an absolute shot of winning the division. So, you know, they're not as much as you'd like to think they're out of it. They absolutely are not. You know, unlike our defense, it looks like their defense seemed to have found some stability, at least playing the Ravens they did. And, you know, I don't know, because, you know, what they're saying is absolutely correct. Does the Steelers team that we're seeing day to day, week to week this season look like they want to win anything? Right? Does it look like they're invested in trying to take this division? Not really. But you could say that about the Ravens too.
Yeah, I mean, and I know some of theirs, again, was beginning of the season, you know, Buffalo, the only team they beat before their bye week. So they went 1-5. The only team they beat was the Browns, and they beat on them pretty bad, 41-17. They had a close loss. They had close losses, you know, Buffalo, Detroit, Kansas City actually laid it on them pretty good. Even the Houston Texans came out like of nowhere. At that point, you were thinking, now there's a team that's really surging. That's a team that looks like, look out, stay out of their way. Everything's clicking now. This is a runaway train and you don't want to get in front of. That's not what the Steelers look like. And I don't know that the Steelers have an opportunity now to become that train. I mean, it would have to turn on pretty quick. We don't know where it'll turn on. Then you've got the issue of, I was trying to find, there's a bunch of photos that were over on the Steelers media site, not of Mason Rudolph. I was looking for Aaron Rodgers, and I'm pretty sure here's one right here. I mean, when you've got like this wrist that's padded up that bad and you know he's got 3 fractures, I don't know that the dude could, I mean, it wasn't like he could squeeze the football even when somebody was coming from behind him. That's how Joey Bosa gets the strip sack pretty much, right? He doesn't know he's there and he can't get 2 hands on the football. And then you're playing out of the shotgun. And I was really ragging on this. We were talking about this on the last show where I was talking about it on one of the reels. When you go into shotgun, you're eliminating a large portion of your playbook And you pretty much, where do you start your runs from? On one side of Aaron Rodgers or on the other? I mean, you're starting that many yards back for a team that already can't run the football. So
yeah,
that's I don't know. I don't, and I don't know that Adam Thielen being active. I mean, you would have thought Calvin Austin or Roman Wilson could have been part of this game plan at some point. Where are these damn tight ends at? And you just look all the way around, and it doesn't matter really. I mean, okay, you go and play Mason, but Mason has a floor too. What's Mason going to do? Throw for 200 yards? He might throw for a touchdown or two. He might throw for a pick. He's going to take 2 or 3 sacks more than likely. He's going to stand in the pocket more than he's going to move around, although he could probably move better than Rodgers can at this point. And if you put Will Howard out there, we don't want this argument. I've talked against it many times, but he hasn't practiced enough. He only started practicing in November. He was injured before even Friday Night Lights, which is the second week of camp. So nobody even got to see him throw, barely got to see him throw in person, myself personally. And that was with guys that aren't on this team. They're long gone. If they're still playing football, they're going to be in like the UFL or something in the spring. So just how does he ever get time to ramp up when there's no snaps for a quarterback 3? He's the emergency guy. The other guy's got to get hurt. You just can't bench everyone and say, oh, we'll throw him in, because somebody had mentioned that somewhere in one of these comments. You couldn't do that. You could not do that Sunday. I understand they ended up putting Mason back in to just finish the very end of the game. Oh, give Howard that. Well, that's not even quality. That doesn't help him against like backup defenders, a shell of a defense. Like that doesn't help. You can't evaluate. I don't know that you could evaluate him if you plan to start him Saturday or Sunday to begin with. It's 5 games. You're still at 6-6. People are like, oh, season's long gone. Now I'm far from that, because there's still a chance, even though we're saying there's no hope. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't have a good feeling about any of this going forward. I don't believe that they're going to win the division. I don't believe that they're going to make the postseason. All I'm saying is that mathematically they still have a chance, because the Ravens haven't really shown it either, okay? And Lamar's hurt. So Lamar has been playing very poorly over the last few games. I was going to pull up his numbers real quick too. Lamar, here we go. I said no touchdowns, but 3 interceptions. Threw 1 against the Bengals, 2 against the Browns. He didn't even throw for 200 yards in those other 2 games. He had to against Cincinnati because it was just a dogfight, right? He has taken 9 sacks in the last 3 games. He is his best completion percentage is 56.5. If you actually average it out, it's somewhere around 54 and change over those last 3 games. And he's attempted 25, 23, and 32 passes. So it's not for lack of, he when he's asked to throw the ball, it's been bad. It's been really bad. So they have to lean on Derrick Henry against the Steelers. If they play any type of ball where they control time of possession, this game's over with. That's the way I feel. So the Steelers are still in this, but you can't make these drastic changes. Mathematically, they're in it until they're not in it. And then, like we said before, what do you do? Like, say they win this game, or say it's close, or say they still have a chance when they, later in the season. Like, you're never just going to see Howard unless they're completely out of it. And Tomlin teams are just never completely out of it. And some people think, oh, well, he could go in here, just provide this big spark. I think that's very highly unlikely. It's as unlikely as what we just said with the Steelers making the postseason, winning the division, doing all these other things. There's no hope. There's no reason to believe that a guy that hasn't been able to participate fully with his teammates and has been running the scout team practice squad with an opponent's playbook would turn this whole thing around. So that doesn't, it's more than likely going to be 3 and outs, and it's more than likely that's not where the Steelers are, because their defense just can't get off the field. They can't force these 3 and outs, and the only thing they can do is hope to force turnovers. So when I'm looking at these keys of the game, man, they got to do something other, more creative than just out of shotgun. But Brian, the only thing that might be the savior in this game is if the defense does get their head out of their ass, because the Baltimore Ravens offensive line has not been good either.
No,
they've been really poor this year. So I know Lamar's only taken 27 sacks just in 9 games. It's about 3 per average. So it's starting to teeter towards the higher end, but 9 in the last, 3 games, like I said, 3 apiece average. You got to get after them. And if the Steelers defense, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Nick Herbig, these guys, they got to get after them. If they can't get after them, and you just have these big run lanes that open up for Henry, or you let Lamar run loose, game over. And it's probably season over.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to jump back to the Will Howard thing. And I've said this before, and I still believe this. Right now, you can't play Will Howard. I agree with you 100% on that. You lose this game, you lose to the Dolphins, and you lose to the Lions, that's a different story.
Yeah, you play him for
That's
two.
a different story. Now you're done at that point. Mm-hmm. See what you have, because the draft is coming. Is this a guy who could be capable? Give him the first team snaps starting that week. Let him play, because you know what you got in Aaron Rodgers. You know what you've got in Mason Rudolph. You don't know if you have a quarterback. But I agree with you completely. We're not there yet.
No, not there yet.
We might actually think we are, but we really aren't, right? Because this the way this league has played this year. This is the definition of on any given Sunday, because at any given Sunday, you don't know what's going to happen. The Lions looked like hell last week, then they beat up the Cowboys, right? It's just back and forth. You don't know which team is showing up which week. There's only been a couple teams who have looked consistently solid all year long.
I don't want to get off on a tangent, but just George Pickens, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, well, what are you going to do?
George Pickens resurfaced last night. Now, how do we feel about that again? Giving up on plays and whatnot. So attitude and offensive pass interference, just a really boneheaded one on one of the worst pick plays that I've seen. One of the more obvious ones. It's just like, you're not going to pick up a flag for that. But here's the other part. And you said this, and I just want to be, I said if you started him today, Will Howard, if you started him Sunday, is 5 games enough to really know who he is before you go into next year's draft with oodles of picks, and the host city is Pittsburgh and everyone's going to be geeked up? I think they're taking a quarterback no matter what, if Will Howard hits the field or not. Will Howard getting hurt was the worst thing that could have happened to him. And it's not to say that 100%. He would have played to date. Maybe he would have had to say to at least been a backup, maybe an injury, and he gets in. But this is kind of the same stuff. The people that are lobbying for him, he's a 6th round pick in what was considered a poor draft class, not necessarily just by us, but by all the scouts. And yeah, Tom Brady's 1 in a million. There's been 40 some other 6th round picks, like 100 and some others. And somebody said Brock Purdy, 1 good season, and that guy can't stay healthy, and he hasn't been consistent enough. Mac Jones comes in there, who stunk in New England, and is capable of running the 49ers defense or 49ers offense. That means their offense, Kyle Shanahan system, we saw Sam Darnold and everybody else do decent in there. I think I saw Nick Mullins do good there in San Francisco for a game or so. I don't think 5 games is enough for Will Howard. I don't think 2 games is enough for Will Howard. I think Will Howard's going to be competing for a job or some time next summer, but if they go and they just draft somebody else because it's sitting on the board and they have the capital to doing so, he's not going to be the first option. There's going to be pressure. We talked about this in the last game. We talked about this with, you and I got in the spat over Mason Rudolph and how he doesn't beat anybody else out. There's just a bug under Mike Tomlin's ass where this is the guy that has the less value on the business end of football. We're not paying him as much money. We don't have the draft capital as highly invested in him. The time is highly invested in this player. And so that's why you're going to see Trubisky. That's why you're going to see Kenny Pickett. Russell Wilson to a lesser extent, or Justin Fields or somebody like that too. So they're just trying to see, again, that's something that's kind of valid too. They bring in Justin Fields. Everybody was talking about Justin Fields. This is the future of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Gets benched in New York, right? I said I wanted to keep Justin Fields, but I never thought he was the future. No, and I've been pretty dead set against it. I thought he was he was pretty much an equal to Trubisky, except he had more running skills. He could maybe bring you something. He'd get you a first down or rush for a touchdown or something. He definitely had that element to his game, but the passing part in the pocket, if he's forced to stay in there, he was doing okay. He did okay against the Chargers, and he did not do so okay against like the Colts and Cowboys. And this isn't like a crap on Justin Fields session here. This is just to go to show that everybody's always excited about the next guy that they don't know. It's like the unknown. It's like, okay, we've seen what Rodgers does. Okay, some people were already out on Rudolph, and the people that weren't out on him, they just saw him go out there and they didn't beat the Bears, and he threw an interception with just having 1 series last week, and so they're out on him, and the people that were already out are really out on him. They're like, why is he on this team? Play Howard. And I'm just saying that, like, Howard all the odds are against them statistically. 6th round pick. He could have been a 5th round pick. He could be a 3rd round pick. Rudolph was a 3rd round pick. Josh Dobbs was a 4th round pick. We've seen Duck Hodges go out there undrafted, and he had magic for a couple games, but they still struggled, and then he struggled, and that's it. That was his only year of football. Landry Jones, Dennis Dixon. You've seen some of these guys come in who've had a higher draft pedigree. I know that this guy, we're Buckeyes fans. Once again, we have to put that asterisk on it, right? It's not like we dislike a Justin Fields. It's not like we dislike the person or player. There's just a reality of the translation to the professional football game, that lack of development and experience when you've been injured and not practicing, not being able to be playing. He's not throwing to DK Metcalf if he is throwing any at practice, right? He's throwing to Keyshawn Williams. He's throwing to Connor Hayward. That's
to stop your tirade for a moment.
Yeah. But that's the whole point, right? It's just not the time. He's not ready. You throw him out there, and I still don't think 5 games, 4 games, 3 games, 2 games.
I tried hard to stop his tirade. I failed.
I'm wrapping it up. I got to reiterate it because, like I said, unless it's the 2%ers, they don't listen to this and they want to force the issue. You force the issue, you ruin this player. He's not ready.
And here's where I don't agree with you. I think they can learn enough from the last 2 games to know whether there's a reason to think he has something. I don't think they'll know. I think they can learn something from seeing what they get out of him, right? You put him in absolute starting positions. You give him the ability to run the first team reps. I'm speculating that the season is over at this point, right? Part of that means I don't really care if they win or lose the game, nor do they. They just want to evaluate, does he have anything? Can he read defense? Can he go off the first read to the second read? Does he know how to handle his progressions? Can he understand, basic situations? You're not going to know everything about the guy. I agree with you there, but you'll know something more than you know right now. And that's why there's some value in saying, once the season's through, go ahead and give this kid a shot. I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think they will regardless. No, right? I don't think Will Howard sees the field regardless. In fact, I'm pretty sure Will Howard never sees the field.
That's the big one I was going to say, Brian, because of that injury too. And because of where they're at, and because of the draft coming up and having all of those picks and it being in Pittsburgh, and they take another guy, that business aspect of the the NFL and the Steelers and needing that quarterback, you're not going to play Will Howard, who's never played, over your 1st round pick, who could be, the pro ready guy that comes out of whatever system, whoever that might be. Right? Let's say it's the guy from Indiana, for example. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Well, I'm going to throw this out.
You're never going to play Howard over.
And you're never going to get him. You're not going to move up to the draft.
No, you're not.
But, look, if we lose out, let's say we lose out, all of a sudden we got a top 10 pick. All right, that's a little different story. Now you do have some flexibility to move around and figure out what you're going to do. I'm going to operate on the assumption that we're still going to be in the teens, okay? And if we're in the teens, I don't even know if this draft class is valid for them as a quarterback class. It's still not as good as everybody was expecting it was going to be. There's maybe 2 guys, maybe 3, and they could all go in the top 10, in which case you're on the outside looking in again. I know they got a lot of picks, but you know what else I know about this team? They got a lot of damn problems.
That's also true. Yeah, and I mean, where do you even start with that? They might need all of those picks, and what's that mean? I'm going to throw this out here. I know this has nothing to do with the Ravens. It should be talking about Mark Andrews and Isaiah Likely and guarding these guys, and I think we're very familiar with these players, and I think we've just pretty much said what there needs to be, because there's just so much, so little. There's so much that's been a problem and so much that's so little hope that if they can't just get off the damn field and force some 3 and outs, and I mean, they have to do turnovers and they have to score off of these turnovers. That's going to be the whole key. That's the key of the game. Now, bouncing back as far as, the draft or anything like that goes, and the team having enough problems. I've seen, where was it at? It was somebody that was talking about signing Tyrod Taylor, trading for Anthony Richardson. Look, if they wanted Taylor, they could have had him like a dozen times over. That guy's bounced around everywhere in the league. They're not interested. Okay, not interested there. Taylor's not a fit. The only way Taylor's a fit was if they had a guy like a Richardson. You have to emulate and have to keep the same playbook between your backup and your starter, is what the New York Jets just did with Justin Fields, right? And that's the way that some of the people in the media look at this. They immediately go, well, that's Mike Tomlin's preference. He's going to go after like an Anthony Richardson. The thing that I heard earlier this year out of a Mike Tomlin press conference, and when he was talking about the Colts, and he was talking about, I think Brooke Pryor asked this from ESPN, because Flacco was playing for the Bengals now. And he talked about Flacco playing with the Colts. And he had made some comment, and it was actually a very short stick type comment on Anthony Richardson, of which it was a completely different quarterback, and we knew that Joe's game was a lot different. That told me all I needed to know about what Mike Tomlin thinks, if he's still here, in evaluating Anthony Richardson, and that's he will not be in a Steelers uniform unless the dude was strictly a backup. He would have to be a backup. The problem is you sign a guy like that the same way they traded, or trade at this point, right? They traded for Justin Fields. People think that that's going to be the starter, particularly when you had the injury to Russell Wilson, and the media got it all wrong. So that's like a gigantic mess. Let's not think about that. There's still 5 games to go. I just think that that's like a terrible path. I think the only way you get out of this, there isn't anybody that's going to be available in free agency or available via trade that's going to give you any different results than what you've been seeing over the last few seasons. It's going to have to be done in the draft, and even in the draft, it's a gamble. The highest failure rate is for quarterbacks. The deeper they go in the draft, the higher the failure rate, unless somebody completely misevaluates the player, which was the case of Tom Brady. A couple other guys squeak in every now and then, but then they show their true colors. Matt Schaub is one that comes to mind, and I think he was still like a 3rd round pick. So and he sat for several years too before he played.
This is just the reality of where we are. They've tried signing veteran quarterbacks for the last 2 seasons. Didn't work. Maybe even for the last 3 seasons if you add Trubisky into that. They've tried that path. Hasn't worked. It's not going to work, right? Because the guys that you can get in free agency are not going to be guys that are going to be able to lead you to the promised land. We are in that no man's land of we need the next franchise quarterback. The place they're going to find that is in the draft. And it is no guarantee they're going to hit on it the first time they try, which they already did. They hit and miss on Kenny Pickett. The next one may be the same thing. All you have to do is go back, to the doldrums of the '80s and know I can draft quarterback after quarterback after quarterback after quarterback. Maybe some of them will be exciting. Maybe some of them will give you a Cordell, or maybe some of them will give you a little fun like Bubby Brister, or they could all be crap.
Yeah, it's tough to say. And I was joking with somebody. It's like one of those, you look at the map and it says, you are currently here. And right now you're in the same period of Tom Zach, Kent Graham, Cordell Stewart. Cordell was a 2nd round pick. And don't forget, Cordell wasn't playing quarterback initially either. And I think Cordell's ahead of his time. It's a different game.
I agree with you completely. Nobody knew how to handle Cordell. Do I think he had the same exact skill set as a Lamar Jackson? No. But
Lamar's a better runner. Way better runner.
But Cordell had his issues with throwing the ball too. He wasn't that great at reading defenses. He had his own liabilities, right?
Yeah.
But nobody knew how to handle that kind of a quarterback at that time. The NFL wasn't schemed for it. Mm-hmm. And Bill Cowher certainly didn't know, what do I do with this guy? They did the best they could. That's why he was Slash, right? They put him all over the place, and they did whatever they could to try and make it work. And it almost did, right? We had some successful seasons with that guy. So you look at that and go, would you take that? Here's the thing. Would you take that? Or is it they got to win Super Bowls?
I posed that question on social media about whether you would want 10 years of making the playoffs guaranteed, or 1 Super Bowl ring or trophy. Which would you take out of that? And I think I'd still take the Super Bowl, but you got to remember, you're going to have some like 4 or 5 win games or seasons mixed in there. I wanted to throw in something else that was real quick, because I was thinking about that Dobbs draft, and you made some comments about the next quarterback draft class, about you just never know. And you got Mitch Trubisky at the top of that class in 2017, Patrick Mahomes, who the Chiefs go up and get at 10. Nobody thought much of then, and boy, they
I don't know that I agree with that nobody thought much of that.
He's going to be
Patrick
a first round
had
pick.
A lot of hype.
he had and he bounced around. He changed colleges too, right? So there was always that question. It's kind of the thing that sticks with Will Howard, except Will Howard wasn't thought to be a first-round pick. Mahomes is a second-generation athlete. There were things like that were definitely. But did you see Mahomes going ahead of Deshaun Watson necessarily in that draft? I don't know that people saw that. I don't know that they saw him going to Kansas City. I don't know that people saw Mahomes going at 10. First round, absolutely. If he went at like 23 or whatever. So you had Watson at 12. Those were the 3 first-round picks. Cleveland takes Deshaun Kaiser at 52. Just goes to show you. Then you got Davis Webb, 3rd round. CJ Beathard, 3rd round. Josh Dobbs, 4th round pick, 135. Nathan Peterman, Pittsburgh Panthers fans, you definitely remember. I think he's still hanging around. A 6th round pick, Brad Kaya. Where was Kaya out of? Miami, Florida. That's right. And then Chad Kelly, who may have been Mr. Irrelevant or very close to it to the Denver Broncos at 253. We could go very much deeper into this, into the off season. It was just a matter of not Howard yet. And I hope I don't have to keep talking about this for the next month of football. It's going to be tiring. Probably Guaranteed. Will, because Rodgers has a bum hand. We don't expect a whole lot with him throwing the football. The Steelers can't run the football. Mason isn't the guy that's been and the same thing with Mason. You don't give him the full week and make him the guy, and you just throw him out there. It's the same deer in headlights. So that's where I agree with you with Howard. I'll say this. I don't want to forget it. If they throw Howard out there and it is deer in headlights, then it's kind of like, well, yeah, this is not going to be good. So I do agree with you on that. If he shows some semblance of being a leader and being able to have some kind of control, regardless of what the production is, because he's probably going to go out there and throw 2 picks, no touchdowns or something like that, right? Complete 55% of his passes. That's what I'm expecting to see. And then there might be some maturity and growth, and you get those jitters out. Maybe he's better going forward. But if he goes out there and he's just completely incapable. And we've seen, the guy that keeps coming into my mind is Skylar Thompson. I know he's on this roster on IR right now, but very similar boat. I think he was a 5th round pick by the Dolphins, and he came in for Tua Tagovailoa. And, he had a couple highlights, and then he had a bunch of lowlights. But when he went out there in the preseason, he just lit it up. And then you're expecting, well, keep this guy, and he might still be on the roster. He might be the backup next year. You never know. But that's the kind of career path. He's not in Miami anymore. That's what I expect of like those day 3 picks.
And people get overexcited about guys who light it up against JV opponents. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. JV against JV. You got a guy who's got NFL experience playing against a bunch of guys who have none, and all of a sudden he lights it up. Oh wow, big surprise. It is what it is. I think you're stuck with the concept right now that you've got an offense where receivers can't get separation and can't get open. The tight ends are not used effectively and they can't get open. There's a terrorized view of throwing over the middle of the field. You've got an offense that is inadequate. They can't run the ball. They can't throw the ball because they can't get anybody open. They don't know how to scheme to get guys open. So that's just a complete cluster. I already dropped one F-bomb this show, so I'm not going to drop another one.
Thank you. I don't have to go out and censor.
You don't have to edit the second one out.
I'm thinking about editing a lot of the show, to be honest. I've been spicy today, a little spicier than usual. So,
but I'm going to tell you you distracted me and my train of thought went off the rails. But what I guess I'm getting at is I don't expect anybody on this roster to come out and perform well in this offense. I think that they will all look mediocre at best and really crappy at worst. What I do think you can get out of playing Will Howard once or if, I'll try and retain some level of optimism. If the season actually is over and you're mathematically eliminated and you have absolutely no shot of a playoff spot or anything else, if we get to that point, what I do think you get out of giving Will Howard first team reps for a couple weeks and some on the field looks, you just get enough sense of, is there anything there? You're never going to know if he's really good in that limited span of time. I agree with you. Yeah. But you can get a sense of, do we have something there to work with or don't we?
I know, because Rudolph had the run with the playoff to get to the playoffs. Looked good, right? You had Kenny Pickett came in for Trubisky. looked a little decent here or there. It looked like you had some promise, and you were like, well, you got to give him a longer leash, give him some more rope, you know.
That's the funny thing. Let's talk about Pickett for a second.
Yeah.
Because we talked about this ad nauseum, and I even got to the point where I said, I don't know, maybe this kid has something. But that's the problem. He would look like absolute crap for 3 quarters. Then he'd have a drive at the end of the game that would be a game-winning drive, and you'd go, wow, magic. And forget that he looked like absolute dreck and trash the rest of the game. And that was the story of Kenny Pickett. He'd have one good drive a game and you'd love it. And sometimes that would win you the game because the defense was still solid enough to keep the games close.
Yep.
But he was absolutely not a good quarterback.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to tack on 15 more minutes to the show and talk about Ben. There's going to be a lot of time to talk about that and quarterback into the off season. But the people that say bring in Big Ben, once again, first round pick, highly selected guy, thought to be the franchise eventually will be. They wanted to sit him and just redshirt him, and it didn't work because of the injuries. He goes out there, he still makes a lot of mistakes. He's throwing some interceptions through 3 seasons. I mean, he had like 25 interceptions or something in year 3, and he took a lot of sacks, and people are like, is this guy gonna last? You know what I mean? But that first year was defense, and even with Kenny Pickett, they were giving up 13 points a game, 16 points a game. Not like where are we at now? Hold on a second. I had it on here. Points per game, the Pittsburgh Steelers are allowing. They're actually in the middle of the pack. They're 20th. And the Ravens are actually right behind these fractional point things, right? 24.1 and 24.4. The Steelers are scoring 23.4, and the Ravens are scoring 24.1. Again, that's middle of the pack type of stuff. The problem is those are averages. 1 week, the Steelers' offense is scoring 30 points, but the defense is giving up 31, and they lose. So you can't have that. It's you know what I mean? It's like then 1 week, we thought last week's game was going to end up being like 9-6 for a final score at halftime. The way it was working out, like it didn't look like either of those teams. Buffalo's in trouble too. I hate to say it, but at least Buffalo has the quarterback, and they've been there. The Steelers have not been there.
That's the other point I'm going to get to.
Yeah,
everybody's. Baltimore has their quarterback.
Yes.
Buffalo has their quarterback.
Yes.
Right?
And they've been there, and they've been in AFC title games.
They've been in games, but they haven't won anything. They could all be Dan Marino. They could be some of the best quarterbacks of their generation, but never win a Super Bowl, never get to the big dance. Right? Because they happen to play at a time when you've got a team with an unbelievable defense in the Eagles who happen to be able to ride that. You've got Patrick Mahomes and a Kansas City team that was unstoppable to a certain extent, up to a point, right? Who knows whether the next thing is, God forbid, please wash my mouth out with soap. Are the Patriots going to suddenly become resurgent? And is Drake May the guy? You never know, right?
Yeah, nobody thought much of him coming out of that draft either, and they were very shocked that the Patriots took him, and that was kind of... How about Watson maybe making a comeback, maybe in time to play the Steelers too? So he's...
Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, Watson's getting put into that 21-day window or whatever, returning to practice.
If the Browns put Deshaun Watson on the field ever again, then they're just moronic.
It's just... and it took 2 quarterbacks, and I don't know that... in the turmoil, and this is not, again, I love to rag on the Cleveland Browns, but this isn't ragging on the Cleveland Browns. This is just a peeking into NFL teams, how they operate. You just don't put on the Steelers jersey and it's Superman's cape. I gotta tell you that. So the way that they're going about Dylan Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders and how dysfunctional their offense is and both of those guys were drafted ahead of Will Howard too. And I'm not saying that the Browns have better evaluators or anything like that, but just in the context of playing in the pros, those guys aren't enough to overcome the other problems that Cleveland has. And Cleveland hasn't really given either one of them enough of a look. And now if they bring Watson into this mix, what do they do next year? It's not like you're going to be like, well, Sanders is the answer. He's shown enough. We could ride with him. And I doubt that even if Howard does that to the Steelers, there's going to be amount of pressure, immense amount of pressure to get a quarterback next year. Rooney will be on it again. And Rooney, even this past season, before the draft, had said if they take anyone outside of like the first couple rounds, that player's not going to see the field this year. And some of this is coming from the owner. And you got to justify when you're the coach and a GM. who signs a check? You've got to justify these things to that guy. And so some people will say, and I know there's a lot of Pittsburgh Pirates fans, and they know Bob Nutting, and I know that they, the Pirates don't, it's a different game. The non-salary cap, the way baseball ends up running, it's not the same thing. So please don't put that in the same category. But ownership has something to play with this too. I think Omar Khan has been able to build enough of good rosters. I think he's made a lot of trades. I think he's done a lot of things that were very un-Steeler, like from Kevin Colbert, who would just constantly build from within. Whether or not that's been working can be of debate. We've got one big game this Sunday, one big one, Brian. Let's see if they change all of our minds. Is your bobblehead even coming out to make a prediction for this one?
Everybody says no. I can just tell you that right now.
Like, you could go.
I don't think they win. The bobblehead doesn't think they win.
One.
Look, this guy back here, Steelers elf on a shelf. Back here, Steelers elf on a shelf. He says they lose.
Yeah. So, all right, my friend.
But the bigger question for the 2%ers who are also Buckeye fans: what's going to happen in that game? We're going to beat Indiana, or we're going to lose?
Indiana home game in Indianapolis. How
I know that's annoying to me.
Is there an apathy to the fans that have seen national title games and used to making the trip to Lucas Oil for a college game? Are they going to show up for this, or are they just going to get drowned out by hungry Indiana fans who haven't seen this football team do anything like this in its entire history, pretty much? Like, I wonder.
I don't think Buckeyes fans ever get
worn out
of it. No,
they definitely are most entitled and spoiled, though, because when that happened with Ryan Day last year and they were ready to fire him, it was all the same comments you hear about Mike Tomlin. And not that this is a Buckeye show, but he loses to Michigan, they still make the CFP and then run the table, and then it's like, oh, we love you again. So Mike Tomlin, you're not listening to this, but if you are, go look at Ryan Day and make a miraculous turnaround, and you'll be back in the good graces of Steelers Nation. So folks, that'll do it for us. Thanks again for watching or listening wherever you may be. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name's Joe, and his name's Brian. Brian, thanks for joining me once again, my friend. And
absolutely. Go Bucks.
Yeah. So that's what we have to look forward to. Maybe a little more than some other folks that only have the Steelers. And then, my other team's out. My FCS team, the Youngstown, blew it big time. So can't look forward to that this weekend either. So Steelers, you got to do something. It's the meme with the guy with the stick. Go out there and do something against these Baltimore Ravens. 1:00 Sunday, M&T Bank Stadium. Till next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.